If you are a Legacy Link employee, if you will please scan this QR code up front after the presentation is over so that we can give credit for extra education, and that goes along with Veronica's program. And we're going to have Veronica talk to us today, living well with a parent with dementia, responding to changes. So I'm going to turn it over to Veronica.
Good morning. So, nice, small, intimate group. We'll have plenty of time to talk about whatever issues you want to talk about at the end and have questions. Okay, so we'll get right to it. I am the dementia care specialist here at Legacy Link. And if you're not familiar with Legacy Link, we are the area agency on aging, and we serve 13 counties in Northeast Georgia. Our mission is to support and advocate for aging adults and individuals with disabilities to be their link for a better life. So just an overview of dementia and what it means. A lot of us like to talk about dementia being an umbrella term, and rather than being a diagnosis itself, there are many different diagnoses that fit under the umbrella term of dementia, including Alzheimer's, which is the most common. And then that followed by Lewy body, frontal temporal, vascular. There's mixed dementias. And every day we're learning more because the researchers are out there doing a great job at learning more and how to treat things and research trials and all kinds of good stuff like that. So when we talk about dementia, people often think about the memory changes coming first. And a lot of the dementias, memory change can be the first symptom, but a lot of people are having questions right now about what is normal aging versus what are symptoms of dementia. So the early common signs to watch for are frequently forgetting recently learned information, often misplacing items in unusual places, repeating the same questions multiple times, and struggling to follow like familiar recipes is a good example. If you occasionally forget to pick things up at the grocery store, or you commonly forget someone's name, that's pretty typical. So, but we're talking about things that are happening over and over and over and over again. When the car keys are in the freezer and the kitty litter boxes got the laundry in it, those are the kind of things that are really big warning signs. And difficulty managing numbers or paying bills. This is a really big warning flag. I've recently been working with some people that are up in Lincoln County, and they've been helping a family who was unaware that the mortgage was 7 months behind, the power bill was 4 months behind. The people that were working with this family, the one that had the power to write the checks, was pretty sure that they were doing a good job. And luckily, because it was caught, the house didn't go into foreclosure, and they were able to reverse things and get it back on track. So there's often challenges with communication that go along with the early symptoms, and then it progresses as you go through the journey with someone who is developing dementia, starting at the beginning, going through that messy middle. There's a lot of steps through it. Difficulty finding the right words. I will word search myself through this presentation. It's very common. So that just because someone is tripping over their own words, it doesn't mean that they have a memory issue or anything cognitive going along. But if it's happening over and over and over, and you're relying more on visual cues, and someone becomes frustrated with it, that might be something to pay attention to. Trouble speaking clearly or fluently. Typically at the very beginning, you're not going to notice this as much, but as dementia progresses, oftentimes what seems to them is normal speech might be coming out kind of gibberish. struggle expressing thoughts, ideas, and needs. Again, that's towards the middle, or what we're now calling the messy middle. And problems understanding spoken or written language, especially written language. I'm coming to find that more individuals are having trouble with the written language first, but spoken language is also sometimes an issue. Changes in thinking and judgment, changes in self-care habits, difficulty managing finances or paying bills, trouble following daily routines or schedules, forgetting to take medications as prescribed, or taking too many medications. So if someone doesn't remember that they took their medication and they take it again, and they don't remember that, and take it again, that can be an overdose problem. And there are some programs that are available to help manage that, including some small pharmacies that can do bubble packs. And that helps both the care partners and the person who is living with dementia, if they have independence, to know exactly what day, what time. Neglecting household tasks. Someone who is living alone may be neglecting the household tasks. They can't see it anymore. And after a while, even people that aren't experiencing dementia, they may develop blinders to it, so they don't see it anymore. This is really important too if they have pets. So if you have a loved one who is living on their own and they have a dog or a cat or a bird or whatever pet they have, making sure that they are not neglecting that animal. An increased reliance on others for activities of daily living. For my own mother, it was, can you stop by the grocery store, which was pretty typical at the time, but then it became more and more and more until she was pretty reliant on people doing all of the daily household tasks and errands, and we got to the point where she wasn't driving anymore, but there was a push-pull on that too. But a lot of increased reliance, but sometimes they don't realize it, or on the flip side of that, they need more support, but they don't want it. They don't see that they need the support. There's a lot of different coping strategies and skills that can be taught and learned if you're dealing with issues with daily tasks, such as, like, for myself, so sorry. So, I like to use a lot of note cards and cues. I use alarms on my phone to remind me of things. You can put a title in the alarm that says take out the trash, or I have a doctor's appointment. So I rely on that myself, and that's very helpful for a care partner. It can also be very helpful for the person living with dementia. Incorporating alternative methods of communication. So when the person gets to the point where they are needing more support, being able to slow down and use other forms of communication, such as hand gestures, taking an improv approach to it, and if they can't come up with the word, you may be able to say, can you show me what it does? I'm looking for the thing. What thing? The thing. Show me what it does. Can you show me what it does? It's that thing that you... A hammer? Yeah, what do you need a hammer for? Well, I don't know. They might not actually need a hammer, but they think they do. Can you show me what it does? You know, the thing. Yeah. So that helps. Also using pictures or written words. Some people use a lot of signage around their house. If someone is having trouble navigating their house, especially at night, sometimes lights will work. A little signage that says bathroom. People use under the bed lighting sometimes. There's a lot of different little things that you can do around the house to help people. Offering step-by-step prompts and demonstrations. It very much depends upon how your house is set up, but lists that say, this is what's in this cabinet. I've been in homes where you open up the cabinet and each shelf is labeled and medicine drawers are labeled, everything is labeled. So that's very helpful, especially if you eventually come to the point where you have someone come in and help. Okay, so also maintaining a calm, structured environment to reduce confusion and anxiety. This is so much easier said than done. Especially when, I feel like I've lost the volume. Especially when you get into a place where you're feeling anxiety yourself or that person is arguing with you, to remain calm and create an atmosphere of calm and stress-free environment. Sometimes that's the biggest ask that we're going to give you. That can be difficult. But the more that you can reel in your own emotions and realize that it's the dementia and not the person, the better off you'll be in the long run. There's a lot of research now. When I first became involved with people who were living with dementia, that research wasn't there. And we didn't really understand that we don't lie anymore. If someone is going to create stress and they have dementia, sometimes the worst will come out. So giving yourself grace, trying not to argue, going with the flow, but keeping them safe is the best and hardest thing to do to remain calm and create an atmosphere of peace. I'm more than happy to talk to anyone about that afterwards and go into more depth, but that's a really good thing to try to do. So back to changes in mood and behavior. As you're moving from early symptoms into the messy middle, that's when a lot of people will start exhibiting changes in their moods and behavior. With some dementias, that is the first sign. For example, like frontotemporal dementia, sometimes a change in personality or behavior is the first sign, but it's overlooked. It's typically seen in people that are a little bit younger, and the reason that it's overlooked is because sometimes you just think, oh, well, my neighbor's a jerk. My person that I work with, I don't really know them that well. We just don't like them. So a lot of younger people who have frontotemporal and have behavioral changes first, that can be this first symptom. And some people say, especially with the frontotemporal, that and couples will go to marriage counseling, and one spouse will say about the other spouse, this isn't the person I'm married, and that's like a pretty big clue that something is changing up in the brain. So they may have emotional outbursts or sudden mood changes. They may use language or comments that may be considered inappropriate by others. They have the possibility of increased irritability or frustration, and that's when you have to be really careful to not let someone pull you in. They may be aggressive or combative, verbally or physically. And they also have a reduced awareness of social boundaries and personal space. And they have difficulty regulating their emotions or behaviors in social situations. So all of the little safeguards that keep us from doing things in public, they don't have that anymore. They start losing that. They start losing that filter. So here's some strategies for coping with changes in mood and behavior. Looking for the triggers, noticing patterns such as hunger and pain, fatigue, a change in temperatures, I'm too cold, I'm too hot. Those are things that make me irritable. Sometimes it can be a person You have to really be a good detective when you're in this stage and you're trying to figure out what the triggers are. Sometimes it could be a TV show, and that triggers memories or emotions for that person, and it may slip back into a different time in their emotional state. So finding that trigger is really key, especially if something happens over and over again. Observing the nonverbal cues. A lot of people who have been around babies will understand the nonverbal cues of a small child. So if you are attuned to that, you can also be in tune to an adult when they're wincing, when they're wiggling, when they're uncomfortable, whether it is something that's internal and they're hurting but they're not able to tell you, or whether it's something external, that is clothing that bothers them or the room temperature that bothers them. Looking for those nonverbal cues is helpful. Staying calm and patient, again, is just, I'll reiterate this over and over again to try to reel in your own emotions. And trying to stay, and it says speak in a gentle tone and give the person time to express themselves. As dementia progresses, sometimes it takes longer for someone to be able to get their thoughts, feelings, and emotions out. So we have to give them more time to react, more time to answer our questions. Most of the time, staying calm and speaking very calmly towards them is helpful, but sometimes also matching their energy is helpful. If they're really excited about something, you can match that energy and feed that back, and that also gives them the idea that you understand them, you see them, you get what's going on. Addressing the cause and addressing the environment is the given here. And if needed, take them to the doctor. Sometimes behavioral changes that pop up like overnight might be something like a urinary tract infection or other illnesses that aren't being detected. With most dementias, it's a steady decline. And there's a couple that do a kind of a stair-step thing, but when you see a drastic change overnight, that's typically not the dementia, that's something else that's going on. Always offering reassurance, making them feel that they're safe and supported. As we talk about changes, talking about safety in the home, if they're still staying in their home or if they're staying in your home is really important. Things like falling hazards are really important to look for because of vision changes and balance changes. So as you go through your home or their home, making sure that the pathways are clear and that the frequently used areas are easy to navigate. Taking away clutter can be done in steps. Sometimes it's really hard for people to let go of things. I have heard several different strategies about removing clutter. If you need more tips about that, I'm more than happy to talk to you about that. But the general consensus is to remove small things, pack them up in a box, put them away, and if in a month or two they don't recognize that it's gone, then that's when you can start moving it out of the house. Installing grab bars and non-slip mats in the bathroom, that's really good advice for all of us. I'm actually doing that in my own home right now. And if it's already in place before it's needed, it's not a new big change. Ensuring that the smoke detectors and carbon monoxide alarms are working. Ours actually can be monitored online now. So sometimes if you have someone who's living by themselves, you can get monitors that you can check remotely. Keeping medications, cleaning supplies, and sharp objects safely stored. That is on a as-needed basis as you're going in and making sure that there's safety. There's spaces cleared out, and you can periodically go in and review to make sure that those things are still put up and that nothing new has snuck into the area. And considering labeling floors or rooms to reduce confusion and wandering, that's one of my favorite things too, and I find that very helpful. When we get into talking about the legal matters, starting the conversation early, if you can start the conversation with your loved ones before they get to the point that you have to go in against their will, oftentimes it's much, much easier to get those started when they still have the ability to participate in the conversation. And you want to be able to give that person as much leeway as possible so they can absolutely participate in that conversation. Gathering the important documents, location of the powers of attorneys, the wills, the insurance policies, and banking information, and keeping them in a safe, accessible place. You may want to make more than one copy, especially if your loved one is still in the space where they are able to look at their own documents, they know where their own documents are. To take those documents away from them is not always the wisest move, so making multiple copies so that they're easily accessible when needed. I highly recommend that working with professionals is on the to-do list. There are elder law attorneys, there's several in our area, there's estate planners, and there is Georgia Legal Services, which does a certain amount of pro bono work if someone needs a little extra help. Staying organized is really important. I am not the most organized person, but I do at least have some folders and file boxes at home where I know that this has all of the real estate information. This has all of our health insurance information. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but at least keep everything in the same vicinity, the same place as often as possible. The more organized you can stay, the better it'll be when you have to get something as quickly as possible because you need that document at your fingertips. Involve trusted family members whenever possible. I know a lot of families do struggle. I know I had struggles of my own when I was caring for my own mother who had dementia. My family members at the time were very hands-off. They thought, oh, you've got it. And at the time, I didn't know how to ask for help. Coincidentally, my husband was in the same position on the other side of town when he was taking care of his father. But what I've learned since then, and also through raising a young adult with developmental disability, is that not all of my friends and family members were able to step up to do certain things. So not everyone is able to come and sit with someone who's living with dementia or sit with someone who has disabilities, but they might be really good at picking up some groceries. Or they might be really good at making some phone calls to do some advocacy. Or maybe a cousin or an uncle or a brother might be really good at looking over the financial stuff, the legal stuff, talking to an attorney. So trying to, when you're feeling overwhelmed, trying to delegate tasks can be difficult, but if you can sit down and figure out who does what best in your life and delegating those tasks to them, that can be really helpful. Again, respecting the person's input, including them in conversations as much as possible or as long as possible will help the transitions. So I often talk to caregivers and care partners, and the amount of self-neglect goes across the board. I mean, it almost goes hand in hand with caregiving. But if you don't take care of yourself, that's when you're not going to be able to take care of other people. And one of the things that we really want to be careful for as care partners is that we don't let ourselves get run down. Care partners have a much higher risk of having long-term health effects, health blood pressure, heart, emotional, just the caregiver fatigue is real. So being able to take care of yourself is really, really important. Again, looking for our family and friends to help with meals, errands, and companionship. There's also the option of paid home care providers, adult day programs, residential care communities, and respite care services. Those are all things that you can look into to try to get additional help. There are some programs here at Legacy Link for certain situations, and some of our senior centers offer additional assistance. There are in-home respite providers, and there's a new program in North Georgia called Guide, and an organization out of Cleveland is our local provider for that. And if someone qualifies through the Guide program, they provide respite services, but there's lots of different options out there. So I blazed through it really quick today because I wanted to make sure that everyone had time to talk about what they wanted to talk about. But some additional resources in our area is the Aging and Disability Resource Connection. You'll hear people in our neck of the woods, they'll call it ADRC, the Aging and Disability Resource Connection. So we have counselors right here at Legacy Link, but they serve the entire state. The Alzheimer's Association is always an excellent resource for people to look for information. They have a 24-hour hotline that you can call and talk to someone, even if you're in the middle of the night and you just need a soft shoulder to cry on, and they will support you. They have excellent counselors. Emory University is doing a lot of research. They have a lot of caregiver support programs. Some are in person. There's a few things that they do online. And also on YouTube, they have a lot of videos that are very helpful. Appalachian Dementia Care, they're the provider that is in Cleveland, Georgia, and they are the ones that are providing the Guide program now. And then we have the Memory Assessment Clinic. So if someone is in need of a diagnosis, we have the Georgia Memory Net Assessment Clinic, basically right in our backyard here in Gainesville. They have also added some telemed options, so someone who can't get into the facility can set up some telemed appointments with them. And then we also have the Caregiver's Journey. This is a fairly new resource that I've been using, but they have some excellent resources on their website. And I have printed out the Caregiver Journeys map, the guidebook, and it has a lot of really helpful information from the very beginning throughout the journey. And there's QR codes. It gives you a breakdown of where you are in the journey, what the next steps will be. I really like their website. I feel like it's not too overwhelming because you can go in and look for what you need right here at this moment. And I have some other materials up here that I also printed from their website. But if you go on there, there are lots more materials. There's caregiver self-care guidelines and checklists. There are legal checklists. There's a lot of really good documents that you can print from there and resources that you can use as a caregiver to support your own journey. And that's it.